October 24th, 1944. Southern ridge of Peleliu Island, Palau. Moonlight is a pale, dishonest thing here. Filtered through a canopy of coconut fronds and shredded pandanus leaves, it turns a jungle into a field of gray blades and moving shadows. Corporal Takashi Sato lies curled against the warm, damp earth, his back pressed to a jagged coral outcrop that bites into his uniform. The rock smells faintly of salt and old blood. Somewhere downslope, a coconut grove has been set alight, and the flames throw an orange smear against the smoke-streaked sky. It is hot enough that his breath fogs for a second when he inhales. Every pore on his skin is slick with sweat. Mosquitoes hum like a distant engine. Crickets chirp, then stop as if listening. Sato listens, too. Every sound is a cipher. The thin scrape of a lizard across bark, the whisper of a distant boot in the undergrowth, the soft rattle of sand through a ruined canteen. A dozen paces away, Private Kenji Mori coughs once, a raw, rasping sound, and Sato can feel the man's light, ragged breathing like a second heartbeat. Sergeant Hiro Komodo, bandaged at the temple, is awake and staring at the moon as if it might answer him. Sato's hands are steady, surprisingly steady, but they hold nothing familiar. His Arasaka Type 99 rifle sits across his knees, the wood worn smooth by months of use. A bayonet sheathes at his hip. 2 rusty hand grenades are lashed to his pack like sleeping animals. The canvas webbing that held his rations is empty. His helmet, scuffed, dented, lies half buried in leaf litter and smells faintly of eucalyptus and extinguished smoke. He lifts his head and tastes the metal tang in his mouth. Old blood, tooth enamel, the taste of too many days without fresh water. He remembers the night supply ran low. 3 days ago, he thinks. Time has become elastic here, and how he traded his last cigarette for a spoonful of rice that barely filled him. He remembers the look on Lieutenant Nakamura's face when the radio finally went silent, how the lieutenant had folded a photograph of a small sister into his breast pocket and said nothing at all. Sato can see the young man's hands now, calloused, steady, folding the picture as if setting a stone over a grave. The landscape presses in on them. All around, Japanese positions are pocketed into the coral and roots, small dugouts whose entrances are masked by fronds and canvas tarps. Men are scattered like seeds, a few clustered in half-rotten bunkers, some barely more than shadows posted at listening points. The company is no longer a company. It is a scattering of individuals who know each other's breath and gait by rote. Sato counts bodies in his head until counting becomes a kind of prayer. Lieutenant Nakamura, Corporal Ishida, killed in that morning's ambush, Private Watanabe, whose leg they had to leave, good men, faces he can still conjure. The list is the shape of a life reduced to small, terrible facts. Beyond the immediate hush, there is the all-night machinery of the enemy, muffled voices, the metallic clink of helmets, the low, controlled rhythm of Allied patrols sweeping the ridge lines. Sato hears them as if through a screen, an American voice, clipped and steady, then a softer laugh. The language is foreign, but the cadence is the same as anything that walks at night and offers no mercy for mistakes. Once, when he was younger, he imagined war as something one could see clearly and decide upon. Now decision comes in fragments. When to breathe, when to open your eyes, when to let the bayonet stay sheathed, and when to draw it like a sting. They have no supplies. The ration tins are gone. There is a single strip of dried fish shared between the 3 of them, and Kenji has eaten most of it, his jaw working mechanically. Water is a memory. An empty canteen clinks when Sato moves, and the map in his pocket is a gray smear reduced by sweat and mud to a tattered nothing. The compass has stopped answering. Their radio is dead, smashed by a shell days earlier. The imperatives of command have shrunk to a single human calculus. Survive the night. But survival here is complicated by doctrine. Sato was taught differently than an islander or an enemy soldier would be taught. He was taught the language of honor. The weighty words of Bushido and imperial edicts seared into training camp slogans and shouted under sunrise drills in Osaka. Surrender, he learned, is a word to be spat out. It is humiliation and erasure duty. He still can hear the company officer at Kure murmuring, a soldier must maintain honor even in defeat. Those words hover now like a judgment. They sit on his tongue as he imagines, in the middle of the night, The terrible arithmetic of option. Fight until there is nothing left, or surrender and carry a shame that would stain family and name for years. He thinks of his father, Sato Hideo, who once folded him a paper crane and told him to never bring shame to the family. He thinks of his mother's hands, the smell of miso soup in a kitchen that now seems like another life. These memories are soft, almost tender, and they press awkwardly against the coarser knowledge in him that Lieutenant Nakamura whispered last week about saving what we can for the children, if there ever was a chance. Nakamura's eyes had looked older than his years. Sato remembers the lieutenant's voice level as a blade. If capture means life beyond this island, and that life can be of use, then a man must consider. But we must also show the Emperor we held fast. The balance shifts and shifts, duty like a scale with no solid fulcrum. Footsteps, lighter, careful, brush the leaf litter uphill. The three men freeze as one organism. Sato can see the silhouette of Sergeant Okamoto. Finger to lips, his bandage a dark stripe against the moon. He watches the brush part and a shadow move, not toward them, but along the trench. Voices pass, English low and steady. The patrol is close enough that a leaf's fall could betray them. Sato's hand accidentally slides across his rifle, but loud in the hush. For a heartbeat he wonders, if the patrol hears him, will they shoot without question? Will they take him alive if he does not draw the bayonet? The shame of surrender feels suddenly as visceral as hunger. He brings his mind back to a flash, training fields of Kyushu, where young men ran through bayonet drills under a sun that did not yet know death. He is a young recruit again, hair shaved, voice hoarse with shouting orders, and the corporal there grips his shoulder and says, half laughing, "Keep your head, Takashi." Those words now feel distant and incandescent, like a lamp under a gauze. He wonders how many nights in Kyushu he could have used that lamp. A rustle to his right. Kenji shifting, trying not to cough. Sato leans close and whispers, "Stay quiet. Breathe slow." His whisper has all the tenderness of a farewell, though he does not know whether it is goodbye or merely another passing night. Above them, the moon slants toward the western sea. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the Allied patrol rounds the next stand of trees and stops. Voices hushed, a flashlight probing the trunks. Sato closes his eyes and listens. The decision is not yet demanded, and yet it sits like a stone at the base of his throat, waiting for morning or for the chance to be thrown. The American patrol moves on, their footsteps fading into the thicket, and the jungle exhales again. Sato lowers his rifle and feels the rigid tension ebb from his shoulders. The danger passes, but something inside him does not loosen. Instead, a memory stirs. Slowly at first, then with the clarity of a lantern flame catching dry wick. He is 19 again, standing on the docks of Kobe in the spring of 1942, the wind thick with the scent of brine and coal smoke. Cherry blossoms have begun to fall across the streets like small, crumpled letters from the gods. His uniform is stiff, new, and smells faintly of starch and sun. His mother stands 3 paces behind him, her hands clasped together as though they must hold something fragile. He dares not look at her too long. Her eyes might undo him. His father stands closer, broad-shouldered and firm, a fisherman's hands folded behind his back. "Serve well," the older man says, voice low enough that the officers can't hear. "But serve wisely. There will come a moment when courage is not what you were taught it is." Sato remembers frowning, confused. Courage was a simple word to him then, sharp-edged, clean, wrapped in slogans and shouted by instructors who believed themselves invincible. But his father's words slipped under the slogans like water through cracks. He boarded the troopship with a heart full of something that felt like importance. Around him, younger recruits joked, smoked, nudged each other with elbows sharpened by bravado. Someone played a shamisen near the railing, and the notes clung to the metal like small ghosts. Sato leaned out over the sea as the ship lurched forward, watching the water curl and break, forming a long white trail stretching back toward the shrinking homeland. 2 months later, he stepped onto a humid island where the air smelled of rot and sweetness. They trained on beaches of coral, marched under a sun that cut down the unwary, and slept on mats that crawled with insects. The officers said endurance built character. The enlisted men said the jungle tried every day to take it away. He remembers Mori, now breathing softly somewhere behind him. Arriving halfway through training, his boots too big and his optimism too loud. Maury had a habit of polishing his mess tin until it shone like a tiny mirror. "If we ever get lost," he once joked, "I'll flash this at the sun and call for help." Their sergeant smacked the back of his head and ordered him to bury the shine in mud. Maury had laughed, the kind of laugh that made a whole line of weary soldiers smile. Sato has not heard that laugh in weeks. From training, they sailed again, this time in cramped, miserable holds, to islands whose names he barely learned before leaving them behind. Some places were quiet, almost peaceful. Others were not. He remembers Guadalcanal's heat pressing against him like a giant's palm. The night they arrived there, flares lit the treetops and the sky throbbed with artillery. He remembers his first encounter with enemy fire, how the ground seemed to leap under him, how his ears rang until the sergeant's voice broke through the haze, shouting orders he barely understood. He remembers, too, the first time he saw surrender. It was a small moment, awkward and ugly. A lone American Marine, wounded and staggering, emerged from the brush with his arms raised. The officers shouted at their men, "Do not trust them. They trick us." A few soldiers raised their rifles. Sato had frozen, his heart hammering. The Marine dropped to his knees, trembling, pleading in a language they did not understand. He looked terrified, not monstrous, not cunning, just human. Sato had stared at him, at the way his hands shook, at the way his lips formed sounds that were clearly fear. Then Lieutenant Kondo ordered the prisoner taken for questioning, and the moment dissolved, but something lodged in Sato's chest that never left. A question without shape, a hesitation buried under discipline. The air on Peleliu tonight carries that same humidity, that same faint sweetness of rot. The jungle insects buzz louder as the night deepens, and a breeze moves through the branches with the gentleness of an exhale. Sato feels a memory settle over him like a thin blanket, not comforting, but familiar. Another sound drifts through the trees, a faint, distant thud. Mortars. The Americans are tightening their grip around the last pockets of resistance. Sato looks toward the ridgeline where the sky flickers briefly, as if wincing from the explosions. He wonders if any Japanese reinforcements will come, though he knows the answer. In the last briefing before their radio died, the lieutenant had said reinforcements were unlikely. Unlikely, a small word, but delivered in a tone that meant impossible. Sato touches the leather bound around the hilt of his bayonet. It is worn smooth, darkened by sweat. This ridge may be his final battlefield. The thought brings no fear, just a hollow, echoing space in his chest where certainty used to be. Behind him, Maury coughs again, a soft, muffled sound, but still too loud for comfort. Sato crawls a short distance and rests a hand on the younger man's shoulder. Maury's eyes open just a sliver, reflecting the moon. There is fever there. Sato can feel the heat rising off him. "Drink," Sato whispers, guiding the canteen to Maury's lips. It's almost empty, only a few drops, but Maury swallows him like a man tasting rain after a drought. Sato watches the boy close his eyes again and sink back into an uneasy sleep. He stays there for a moment, eyes narrowed, listening for the enemy patrols. The night presses in with its heavy, wet quiet. He feels again the weight of his father's words, buried under years of war, but not forgotten. There will come a moment when courage is not what you were taught it is. He wonders, quietly, silently, if that moment is near. The sky begins its slow, reluctant transformation. Night thinning at the edges, hints of gray pooling behind the jagged ridge. Sato watches it happen through the lattice of branches above him. Dawn on this island is not a gentle event. It arrives like a blade, sudden, bright, revealing everything that night tried to hide. The jungle wakes with it. Birds call once sharply, as if warning something unseen. The insects shift their pitch. Even the distant ocean seems to grow louder, its waves slapping coral in a restless rhythm. For a moment, Sato feels as though the entire island is drawing breath. He rises to his knees, moving slowly so the branches don't crack under his weight. Sergeant Okamoto is already awake, sitting several paces away with his back straight and his eyes fixed on the horizon. The bandage around his head is stained a deep rust brown, and the left side of his face sags, slightly where shrapnel struck him. Yet his posture remains rigid, disciplined. Like a man carved from the very coral he leans against. Sato approaches him. "Sergeant," he whispers. Okamoto does not look away from the horizon. They will attack soon. Sato's throat tightens. He knows the sergeant is right. American patrols rarely let an entire night pass without tightening their circle. And if the enemy has learned the terrain, and they surely have, this ridge is merely one more knot be untied in their advance. "I sent Mori to sleep," Sato says quietly. "You did well," Okamoto replies. He needs strength, even if his voice drifts off. Sato sits beside him, close enough to hear the shallow rasp of the sergeant's breathing. The older man's uniform is ragged, the sleeves torn, the fabric ripped near the ribs. His rifle lies across his lap, oiled and ready, though Sato doubts the sergeant has more than 6 or 7 rounds left. "Sergeant," Sato murmurs, "what do you plan to do when they come?" Okamoto closes his eyes for a moment, then inhales the heavy morning air. "I will fight. That is what is left of me." He turns his head slightly. His one good eye settling on Sato. "But you, Takashi, you are young, strong. You can still choose." The words strike him like a blow. "Choose," Sato whispers. "There is no choice." "There is always a choice," Okamoto says, "even if our commanders wished us to believe otherwise." Sato stares at the dirt between his boots. The soil is dark, clumped with moisture, dotted with fallen leaves. He imagines the earth swallowing them after death. Uniforms, rifles, dog tags, names. Everything reduced to fragments the jungle will reclaim. "You heard what they taught us," Sato says. "Surrender is shameful," Okamoto finishes. "Dishonorable, a stain." "Yes, yes." He waves one hand dismissively. "They taught us many things. Some true, some half-true, some lies for boys too young to question." Sato feels a chill that has nothing to do with the morning breeze. Okamoto leans closer. "I have seen battles since Shanghai. I have watched entire companies vanish. I have watched men die senselessly because they were too afraid of dishonor to preserve the life the emperor had already lost." He pauses. The wind shifts, carrying the faint, unmistakable sound of boots treading through brush. American boots. "They told us that surrender means losing everything." Okamoto continues, voice hushed. "But I have seen prisoners fed, treated, given water. I envied them. Takashi envied them because they would live to see another sunrise, even if it was not under our flag." Sato feels his hands trembling. He presses them against the ground until the shaking stops. "If I surrender," Sato mutters, "my family will still have a son." Okamoto interrupts. "Is that not something?" Sato cannot answer. His throat is tight, his chest hollow. Then movement in the trees. Okamoto's head jerks up. Sato tenses, his fingers curling around his rifle. The branches ahead tremble. A flicker of dull green fabric. A whisper. Then a voice. English. Too close for comfort. "They're here." Okamoto breathes. Mori stirs from his sleep, wincing as he rolls onto his elbows. His face is pale, feverish. But when he sees the sergeant raise his rifle, adrenaline sparks in his eyes. Sato steadies himself. The decision he feared all night now stands before him with the inevitability of sunrise. Okamoto rises, clutching his rifle with both hands. "This is where I stop," he says quietly. "Takashi, if you wish to live, you must decide now." The foliage parts. 3 American soldiers emerge, cautious, alert, rifles leveled. Their uniforms are damp with sweat, helmets streaked with mud. One whispers something and gestures toward the Japanese position. Mori chokes on his breath. Sato feels his heart pound so hard it almost deafens him. Okamoto lifts his rifle. "Sergeant," Sato whispers urgently. "No." But the sergeant only smiles, a small, tired smile, and steps forward. He fires once. A muzzle flash lights the ridge. The Americans shout, diving for cover. Bullets whip through the undergrowth, snapping branches, tearing leaves. Mori, panicked, scrambles backward. Sato drops flat against the earth as bark splinters above him. Okamoto fires again and is struck. He collapses beside a thick root, his rifle slipping from his hand, a dark stain spreading through his uniform. Sato crawls to him, dragging Mori by the arm. The Americans advance methodically, measured, controlled, disciplined. Okamoto grips Sato's wrist with surprising strength. His breathing is shallow, but his voice is clear. Takashigo! Live. His fingers tighten. Courage is not always a sword. His hand slips away. The jungle seems to freeze around Sato. Sounds muffled, breath trapped in his lungs. Mori trembles beside him, staring at the sergeant's still form. Corporal, Mori whispers, "What do we do?" Sato stares at his fallen sergeant, then at the Americans moving toward them with steady, professional steps. He must choose, fight to die, or surrender to live. The night deepens. Clouds drift across the sliver of moon, casting the jungle in shifting bands of shadow. Corporal Hiroshi Sato lies motionless in the undergrowth, face pressed against the damp earth, listening, waiting, measuring every breath against the hum of insects and the distant shuffle of boots through brush. A patrol. He knows the difference between the sound of animals and the careful, deliberate steps of trained men. These are Americans, heavy gear, uneven cadence, quiet but not silent. They're sweeping the valley floor again. Closer than yesterday. Closer than the hour before. Hiroshi's fingers tighten around his Type 99 rifle. The barrel is cold, almost slick with condensation. He keeps the safety off. He doesn't blink. He cannot afford to. Behind him, somewhere in a tangle of roots and hanging vines, Private Nakamura breathes shallowly. His fever has worsened. Hours ago he could whisper. Now he only whimpers occasionally, soft, uncontrolled sounds that claw at Hiroshi's nerves. He crawls back a few feet to kneel beside the wounded private, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Quiet," he mouths silently. Nakamura's eyes flutter open, unfocused, glassy. He nods weakly, but another involuntary groan slips out before he can stop it. Hiroshi's heart stops. The jungle around them answers. A single American voice murmurs something. Hiroshi can't tell what, but he hears the shift in tone. Alertness. Interest. Boots slow. A beam of white light snaps on, slicing across tree trunks and ferns. Hiroshi lowers himself instinctively, pulling Nakamura's face into his chest to muffle the sound. The flashlight cuts closer. 10 meters, 8, 5. Sweat rolls down Hiroshi's neck. He feels each droplet like a drumbeat. He remembers training at Fukuoka, the instructor shouting, "Your body will tremble, but your mind must not. Death is the shadow that follows the coward." The words have been carved into him. They rise now, uninvited. He tries to slow his breathing. Calm, steady, and then another memory interrupts. His younger sister, Emmy, running barefoot between rice paddies, chasing fireflies at dusk, her laughter echoing across warm summer air. The same hour of night as this one, but different world entirely. A world where no one hunted him. A world where surrender was not shame, only unimaginable. He blinks. For half a second, he is there with her. Then Nakamura convulses. A choked cry escapes him, louder than before. Unmistakable. The flashlight stops, locks onto the bush where they hide. A gun cocks. Hiroshi moves without thinking. He clamps a hand over Nakamura's mouth, dragging both of them into the hollow at the base of a mangrove root. His shoulder scrapes bark. His knee smashes a rock. Pain shoots up his leg, but he grits his teeth. Voices grow louder. Branches snap. They are closing in now, slow and deliberate. Hiroshi counts the silhouettes. 3, maybe 4. He can't fire. One shot, and the whole company will collapse on them. They'll be dead within minutes. Nakamura shivers violently against him. Hiroshi stares upward through the vines. The sky is barely visible, thin fragments of moonlight waving like drowned silk. He inhales the scent of mud, salt, and gun oil. Somewhere above the canopy, the war grinds on explosions and fire. Down here, death moves on boots. He whispers into Nakamura's ear, so softly it's barely breath. Hold. Don't move. Don't make a sound. But Nakamura cannot hear him anymore. The footsteps stop directly in front of them. A flashlight beam cuts across Hiroshi's arm. Another inch, and they will see everything. He lifts his bayonet very slowly, holding it close to his chest, not to attack, but to prepare for final inevitability. If they pull the vines aside, if they take one more step, then the distant blast of a flare gun cracks through the night. The Americans turn instantly, muttering, shifting, redirecting their weapons. Another squad has signaled something down the ridge. They pivot, retreating toward the flare's dying ember. Leaves rustle. Boots fade. Silence returns. Hiroshi doesn't move for a long time. When he finally exhales, his entire body trembles. He looks down at Nakamura. The private's eyes are half open, but there is no recognition in them, just suffering and exhaustion. Hiroshi brushes a hand across his sweat-soaked forehead. He realizes then what he has refused to admit since yesterday. Nakamura will not live until sunrise, even if the Americans don't find him. Hiroshi's throat tightens. His doctrine tells him what he should do. Mercy in this army has its own brutal definition, but he cannot bring himself to do it. Not yet. A breeze shifts the trees overhead. Night insects buzz louder. The jungle seems to press closer, as if waiting for his decision. Hiroshi closes his eyes and whispers, to no one, to everyone, to his ancestors, to Emmy, to the moon. How much longer can I pretend there is a way out? He opens his eyes again. The answer is already waiting in the darkness. The jungle has fallen into that strange, breath-held quiet that only comes when men on both sides are afraid to move. It is nearing midnight now. August 3rd, 1944, somewhere on the northern ridge of Tinian, and Corporal Hiroshi Sato sits with his back to a tree whose roots clutch the soil like twisted fingers. The moon is only a thin sliver overhead, barely enough to outline the shredded canopy above him. Every sound feels sharpened. Every silence feels significant. His knees ache from hours spent crouched in a firing position, but he doesn't shift. He doesn't dare. Somewhere off to his left, an American patrol is sweeping the ridge. He can hear their boots, their quiet radio murmurs, the metallic whisper of weapons being adjusted. They sound confident, well-fed, well-supplied, steady, not desperate like him. His Type 99 rifle rests across his lap, the wood darkened by sweat, dirt, and the humidity that clings to everything on this island. Only 5 rounds remain. He has counted them again and again in his head, the number echoing like a sentence. 5 rounds for a war that swallowed years of his life. 5 rounds for a cause that now feels achingly distant. A faint rustle in the brush snaps him back to the present. He freezes. His hand creeps toward the hilt of his bayonet. But it's not an American. It's Sergeant Nakamura, or what's left of him. The sergeant drags himself through the undergrowth, leaving a smear of dark blood across the ground. One of his legs is twisted unnaturally. A mortar blast earlier in the evening caught the 2-man outpost they shared. Nakamura survived long enough to crawl, alone delirious, back toward Sato. Hiroshi, the voice is barely more than a breath. They're coming. Sato slides forward, catching the man before he collapses completely. Nakamura's face is a mask of dirt, mud, and pain, his skin cold despite the oppressive heat of the jungle. Sergeant, stay still. I'll bandage you. No time. His fingers clamp around Sato's sleeve with surprising strength. Listen to me. You must survive the night. The words feel wrong coming from a Japanese senior NCO. Survival, especially in the face of defeat, is not what they are taught, not what they are expected to consider. Sato shakes his head. The Americans are close. They'll find us before dawn. A grim smile pulls at the sergeant's blood-crusted lips. Then you choose how they find you. A distant flare arcs into the sky, white, bright, and burning. The treetops illuminate in flashes, shadows dancing like spirits disturbed. The American patrol is moving faster now, calling signals, tightening their sweep. Sato's pulse quickens. He presses closer to the earth. The island smells of rotting leaves, salt carried from the distant beaches, the metallic hint of old blood. Everything feels suffocating, closing in. Sergeant, Sato whispers, were you ever afraid before this? Nakamura laughs softly, a cracked, broken sound. Only fools feel no fear. His breath shudders. But shame was always worse. The word hangs between them, a forbidden truth. Surrender, the ultimate disgrace. The stain that would haunt a man beyond his death. But so would being found with a rifle in his hands and no hope left. Sato knows what he has been taught. He knows what his officers preached, what the propaganda posters promised, what every training speech hammered into their skulls. Honor above life, death before surrender, Bushido, and yet, watching Nakamura fade in his arms, listening to the distant Americans coordinate with calm precision, he feels something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Doubt, not in himself, but in the men who sent him here. The sergeant's grip loosens. His eyes roll slightly, focusing on something far away. Hiroshi, whatever you choose it as a man, not as a tool. Moments later, he stops breathing. The jungle goes quiet again. Sato closes his comrade's eyes. The man's weight seems heavier now, final, as if the jungle itself has claimed him. He wipes his hands on his trousers, smearing the sergeant's blood across the fabric. It is warm for only a moment before cooling under the night air. The American voices grow louder. He can see glints of reflected light through the brush. Helmet silhouettes, rifle barrels, the slow sweep of a flashlight beam. He grips his remaining 5 rounds. He grips his fear, his anger, his uncertainty. And then, for the first time in the entire war, he feels the possibility of a choice opening before him. Fight to the end, or surrender and live with the weight of shame. He crouches deeper into the shadows as the patrol approaches. The decision must be made before sunrise. The Americans are close now, so close that Corporal Hiroshi Sato can hear the soft rustle of their packs brushing foliage, the controlled breathing of men who know they have the advantage. It is still the dead of night on August 3rd, 1944, northern ridge of Tinian, but the horizon carries the faintest hint of coming light. Dawn is no longer a distant idea. It is a certainty marching toward him just as steadily as the enemy patrol. He presses himself lower, belly digging into damp earth. The jungle floor is cold despite the tropical heat, cooled by the night breeze that rustles through the branches above. Every movement has weight. Every breath has consequence. A beam of American light sweeps across a nearby tree trunk. Hesitant, deliberate, the soldiers murmur to each other in clipped English. Sato can't understand much, but he recognizes confidence in their tone. They believe they are closing in on the last remnants of a defeated force. They aren't wrong. He glances towards Sergeant Nakamura's still body. The jungle has already begun reclaiming him. Ants crawling across his tunic, moisture darkening the cloth. Sato forces his gaze away. His world narrows to the rifle in his hands. A Type 99 Arisaka. 5 rounds. He imagines how it will go if he chooses to fight. He'll fire once, twice, maybe hit one man before they return fire from multiple angles. Tropical vines and branches will offer little real protection. He knows the Americans carry grenades. He knows they call in mortar fire without hesitation. It will be over quickly. A clean death, a soldier's death, an honorable death. His officers always insisted those words were the same. A twig snaps behind him. Not an American. A shape moves low to the ground, emerging from the dark like a ghost. Private Junpei Morita, younger than Sato by 3 years, with a face far too soft for a battlefield. His uniform jacket hangs open, ripped at the shoulder, a blood-stained bandage wrapped around his left arm. His breathing is ragged, desperate. He recognizes Sato and collapses beside him, mouth trembling. "Corporal, I thought I was the only one left." Sato grabs him, pulling him down into the brush before Morita makes too much noise. The Americans pause at the sound, listening. One raises a hand to halt the patrol. Flashlights flicker. Morita clamps a hand over his mouth, eyes wide. The patrol waits, then slowly moves on. Sato releases a breath. Quietly, he guides Morita deeper into shadow. How many of us remain? Sato whispers. Morita swallows. I don't know. Maybe a dozen? Maybe fewer. Everyone scattered. Lieutenant Yamazaki. He's dead. Captain Fujimura ordered a last charge, but the Americans cut them down. His voice falters. I ran when I shouldn't have. I left them. Sato studies him. Morita shakes, whether from pain or shame. It's hard to tell. Running from certain death. Running from orders. Running from the doctrine hammered into them since the day they first put on their uniforms. Sato doesn't blame him. Listen to me, Sato says quietly. The Americans will find us by sunrise. We don't have ammunition. We don't have food. We don't have... He catches himself before he says hope. Morita looks at Sato with something close to pleading. Corporal, what do we do? The question hits Sato like a physical blow. He is a senior man now. By rank alone, he must choose for both of them. He thinks of Nakamura's words. You must survive the night. Choose as a man, not as a tool. Morita grips Sato's sleeve, voice trembling. If we charge, we die. If we wait, we die. If they find us, he stops. The unspoken conclusion hangs heavy in the air. Sato feels the truth settle inside him. There's a third option. Unthinkable. Forbidden. But real. He can raise his hands. He can lay down his rifle. He can live. But can he bear it? He imagines the shame of returning home. If he ever could return home. The whispers. The judgment. The certainty that to many he would be dead already, no matter what he chose tonight. But then he imagines the alternative. Morita dying here in the dirt, alone and terrified because Sato chose tradition over life. He imagines his own death. Quick. Meaningless. Swallowed by the jungle without honor or witness. A gunshot rings out in the distance. Both men jolt. The Americans have found someone. Sato grips Morita's shoulder tightly. Stay quiet. Stay low. He pulls out his last two canteens and hands one to Morita. The water inside is warm, nearly empty, but it is something, a gesture of humanity, he isn't sure he can afford. Corporal, Morita whispers, do you think surrender is possible? Sato does not answer immediately. Instead, he looks through the trees toward the first faint blue edge of dawn beginning to rise over Tinian. A new day, a day neither of them are meant to see. He closes his eyes. He makes a decision. What we do next, he murmurs, we do together. Morita nods, swallowing hard. The jungle begins to glow with early light. The Americans are returning. Sato grips his rifle, then slowly loosens his hold. Whatever comes next will define the rest of his life, whether that life is measured in minutes or years. Dawn crawls across the canopy like a slow revelation, bleeding pale gold into the cracks between leaves. The jungle that was moments ago a black, suffocating void now becomes a labyrinth of shapes, roots twisting like serpents, ferns drooping with dew, smoke drifting and thin, ghost-like strand from battles fought through the night. Corporal Hiroshi Sato watches the light spread across the forest floor. He feels exposed. Seen. The night had offered cover. Daylight offers truth. Private Morita shifts beside him. In the softening light, the younger soldier's face looks gaunt, drained of blood, the bandage on his arm soaked through. His breathing comes in shallow, uneven pulls. He is fading, and Sato knows they don't have hours. Maybe not even one. The Americans will sweep this ridge at first light, Sato murmurs, watching the distant glint of movement through the trees. We need to move. Morita nods, but can barely push himself onto his elbows. Sato slings the younger man's arm over his shoulder, supporting him. Morita gasps at the pressure, but forces himself upright. Corporal, if we run, they'll hear us. I know. They move anyway. Slow, silent steps through underbrush that clings to their legs. Every sound feels sharper in the morning stillness. The soft crackle of twigs beneath their boots, the distant tap of American boots on rock, a murmur of voices carried on the breeze. Sato's mind fractures between instinct and doubt. Every step forward is a step toward the unthinkable, toward surrender. His training screams at him. The Imperial Army did not teach men to choose life. They taught endurance, sacrifice, death over dishonor. His instructors drilled the creed into him until it was marrow deep. Captured soldiers are not soldiers. They are shadows. But what good is a creed when the war is already lost of men on this island? What honor exists in dying unseen, unheard, unremembered? Morita stumbles. Sato catches him, lowering him into a patch of ferns. The younger soldier's lips tremble. Corporal, I don't want to die here. The words are barely a whisper, barely air. They strike Sato harder than any command he has ever obeyed. He kneels, resting a hand on Morita's shoulder. Then we won't. Morita looks at him, eyes glassy with pain and disbelief. But surrender is a decision, Sato interjects, voice steady now. Not cowardice. Not if it means surviving to see another sunrise. The words feel foreign coming out of his mouth, but they also feel true. A burst of English voices erupts nearby, closer now. An American patrol is pushing through the brush, rifles raised, scanning for movement. Sato freezes. Morita grips his sleeve with trembling fingers. Footsteps crunch leaves just meters from their position. Sato can see them clearly now. For men in olive drab uniforms, M1 Garins held ready. Their faces look hardened but alert, cautious rather than bloodthirsty. One soldier pauses, wiping sweat from his chin. Another checks the towering banyan tree, as if expecting a sniper above. Sato realizes something as he watches them. The Americans look tired. Human, not demons, not monsters, just soldiers wanting to live. For a moment, Sato imagines himself stepping out, hands raised. He tries to picture their reaction. Would they shoot? Would they hold fire? Would they recognize the desperation in his posture? Then Morita exhales sharply, a soft involuntary sound of pain. The nearest American turns toward them. Sato's heart slams against his ribs. He has seconds. He could lift the Arisaka rifle, fire first, die fast. He could drag Morita deeper into the jungle, die later. Or he could do what he already chose in his heart. He places his rifle on the ground. Quietly, deliberately, Morita stares, breath caught. Corporal. Sato squeezes his shoulder. Stand with me? He helps Morita to his feet. The younger man is shaking, but he nods. The Americans edge closer, having heard the rustle. One gestures to the others. Rifles rise. Sato steps forward slowly, hands lifted above his head. Every nerve in his body screams. His instincts claw at him, but he keeps moving. He speaks in a trembling voice, broken English he remembers from training. No fight. The American sergeant stops in his tracks, rifle still trained but eyes widening at the sight of two exhausted, starving Japanese soldiers emerging from the underbrush with hands raised. Morita sways, and Sato keeps him upright. The jungle holds its breath. One wrong twitch, one mistake, one misunderstanding. The sergeant lowers his rifle first. Sato almost collapses with relief. The other Americans follow, confusion and caution mixing on their faces. One motions him closer, hands extended, calm but firm. Sato steps forward. Morita stumbles after him. As the Americans close in, Sato feels a weight on his shoulders lighten, not disappear, but shift. For the first time since landing on this island, the fear of death recedes. He is still terrified, but he is alive, and he has chosen this fate with open eyes. As they are led out of the jungle into open morning light, Sato looks at the horizon. The sun climbs higher, gilding the world in a soft glow. It is a new day, a day he was never meant to see. But he will, because he chose to. The morning sun climbs higher as Corporal Hiroshi Sato and Private Morita are escorted down the slope, away from the jungle that had become both prison and grave. The world opens around them, bright, painfully bright. After so many days beneath the suffocating canopy, the sky feels impossibly wide, like a doorway into another life. American Marines move through the clearing, rifles slung but ready. Some stare, some avert their eyes. A few look at Sato and Morita with something unexpected. Curiosity, not hatred. One Marine whispers to another, "They look like kids." Sato doesn't understand the words, but he understands the tone. The sergeant who found them, gray eyes, jaw clenched but steady, keeps a careful pace beside them. He glances back occasionally, making sure Morita doesn't collapse. When the young private nearly buckles, the sergeant grabs his other arm, wordlessly helping Sato hold him up. It is a small kindness. A kindness Sato never expected from an enemy. The clearing is littered with evidence of battle. Shell casings glinting in the dirt, splintered trees, torn earth where mortars struck. A destroyed Japanese field gun lies overturned, smoking faintly. Stretchers carry wounded Marines back toward aid stations. The air smells of burnt powder, sweat, and crushed vegetation. For the first time, Sato realizes the Americans lost men here too. War did not spare anyone. As they approach the Marine encampment, Sato hears a distant drone of aircraft, the thump of naval guns pounding distant fortifications. The island is still a battleground, but for him, the battle is over. He feels hollow, lighter, but hollow. Morita's breathing grows ragged, and a Marine medic rushes over, speaking gently as he examines the wound. He cuts away the filthy bandage and winces at the infection spreading beneath. He needs treatment now. The medic says, motioning for a stretcher. Sato steps closer. I go with him. The sergeant shakes his head. No, you'll be processed. He'll be taken to medical. Morita looks up at Sato, panic flickering across his face. They had survived the night, survived the decision, survived surrender, only to be separated. Sato kneels beside him, placing both hands on Morita's shoulders. We lived. Sato murmurs in Japanese. That was the hardest part. Now you must let them help you. Morita's eyes well with tears. Not fear, not shame. Something else, relief. The Americans lift him onto the stretcher. He reaches out weakly. Sato grips his hand one last time, squeezing until they're forced apart. As the stretcher is carried away, Sato stands alone. Two Marines approach, guiding him toward a makeshift holding area. A few bamboo poles lashed into a fence, guarded by men who look more bored than hostile. Sato walks without resistance. His legs feel strangely light, as if each step belongs to someone else. Men inside the enclosure, other Japanese prisoners, stare at him. Some with suspicion, some with emptiness in their eyes. One elderly sergeant sits in the corner, staring at the ground, lips moving silently as if repeating a prayer or curse. Sato lowers himself near the fence, back straight, hands resting on his knees. A Marine hands him a canteen. Clean water. Real water. Sato hesitates, then drinks. The coolness shocks his throat. He almost coughs from the sensation of relief. The Marine nods once and steps away. Sato closes his eyes. For the first time since arriving on Tinian, he allows himself to breathe without fear of being heard. His heartbeat slows. His muscles unclench. The crushing weight of duty, impossible duty, lifts from his chest. But not the guilt. His thoughts drift back to home. His mother lighting incense in the family shrine, his younger sister chasing dragonflies in the fields, his father bowing sternly the day Hiroshi left for training. Honor the emperor. Honor your ancestors. Do not return in shame. He had carried those words like armor, but armor can become chains. A breeze rustles palm leaves overhead, carrying distant echoes of gunfire. The war continues. Men will die today, friends, enemies, strangers. But he will not. He presses his palms together, bowing his head, not in ritual obedience, not in fear, in mourning, in gratitude, in the fragile hope of a life still as the shape. Footsteps crunch the sand. The American sergeant returns, crouching beside him. You did the right thing, he says quietly, even though he knows Sato cannot understand. War is over for you now. Sato studies his face. The man looks tired, bone-deep tired, but sincere. And even without understanding the language, Sato recognizes the meaning. He bows his head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement between soldiers. The sergeant stands, dusts off his knees, and walks away. Sato looks at the rising sun again, the same sun that hovered over battlefields all across the Pacific, the same sun that watched him fight, starve, fear, and finally surrender. It warms his face. He is alive. He will see another dawn, and another after that. For the first time, he allows the thought to take full shape. There is a future beyond this island, beyond fear, beyond doctrine, beyond war. He closes his eyes as the sun climbs higher, bathing him in light.